Karen Bourne, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute honor to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Stu. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so I would love it if we could kind of just kick things off and if you could just give our audience maybe just a kind of an idea of like what did life look like for little Karen growing up?
Well, very different than now for sure, because I grew up in a small town in the Midwest in
Huh.
Wisconsin. It's called Sheboygan Falls.
Hmm.
And I still have family there. And the thing about growing up that way is it's exactly what you see in like the, you know, perfect postcard Norman Rockwell type thing, where
Yeah.
it's like our family, we had a family of four. I have one older brother, and the town was small. My dad was the mayor, and that was,
That's so cool.
so everybody knew us, and everybody knew the families, and basically, everybody kind of knows each other, sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
but I had a very musical family. So, and we,
Huh.
also typical of the Midwest, we all attended church all the time. So I kind
Yeah.
of started off being in the spotlight with people. Like when I was in kindergarten, I had my first church solo, with for
Nice.
Christmas kind of thing, and but then growing up, I mean, the tricky part of that all was being known everywhere you go and everything you do.
Right. Kind of
And
on a
kind
spotlight for sure.
of
People
exactly.
know
And then,
everything you're doing.
right. And having to do the right thing, make the right
Huh.
choices. So I clearly was a little rebellious here and there, but I think you have to be to find your boundaries.
Absolutely. And so you grew up then around music, around going to the church, kind of growing your skills probably in that space, right? Of like being in the choir, doing things
Exactly.
like that. And then
Sure.
at what point did you fully step into that? Because I know you were doing, I believe, a bit more in performing arts. And kind of
Definitely.
when did that go to like the next level?
Well, when college time came around, I actually didn't, what most people do when they go to college for performing is they audition like crazy at all these places. But I had been part of a summer program and was offered a full scholarship to come to a college. So
Nice.
I've been so fortunate in that respect. I've
Yeah.
just been in the right place at the right time. But I know that also now I know that was the right mindset at the time to stay open
Yeah.
and receive that. But I scholarshiped through all my college stuff. But I did the undergraduate in Green Bay, and then I decided I needed something bigger. So I went to an exchange office and found a school that was 20 minutes from New York City, which is now William Patterson University. And I did a thing where I could go there for a semester, and then you still paid your tuition
Right.
in Wisconsin. Well, needless to say, long story short, I stayed there. Never
Yeah.
went back.
I love it.
And yeah, and so that's where the performing got going. I got to be part of lots of different types of styles of music and singing, sometimes in the big churches in New York, or
Right.
concertizing with orchestras, and lots of musical theater. So yeah, I had my performing time, which is when I met, my husband, because he was also a performer.
Right.
So, and then we kind of went opposite ways because I did grad school in California. So I went to the
Oh.
University of Southern California, which was really great.
Oh, so
And
cool.
that was a little dive into opera for a short time, but then, headed back to
Yeah.
the East Coast.
Yeah. So one thing I would love to hear from you that you touched on just a little bit is you're saying that what you've come to realize is the reason that the right thing happened at the right time is
Yeah,
because of your mindset. And
absolutely.
I'm a big believer in my life. Things happen at the right time. I'm in the right place. Like they just work out in that way, and they always seem to. I would be curious, like, how did you build that type of a mindset? Were you like born into that? Did you how'd you
I
create that?
think that there's a fair amount of that was just kind of within me. There was a lot as a kid that I just knew or would just see, how you just could look at I often say, oh, I can see something, right? Or for
Yeah.
myself, for my kids, whatever. And I could tell like this is what I needed to do. Like I never questioned, going to this exchange office and signing up for a school, across the country, which, was not something that folks in my area did very easily.
Right.
Nobody really left, but I just knew, within, but also now I can see that at the time being open to that and not having an inner dialogue that I did develop now later in life, which we'll get back to, I'm sure, because I believe that's what
Yeah.
led me to my diagnosis. But the inner dialogue was positive. It was, I can do this. My life's ahead of me, wide
Yeah.
open, just believing that you can do it
Yeah.
and not talking yourself out of it subconsciously.
Yeah.
So if it was
That's
possible, great.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's funny when I grew up, like I have this fond memory of when I was younger, like I don't know, in my teens somewhere,
Okay.
and building a similar type of like inner conversation where I would look in the mirror and I would just say like, "Congratulations on running this multi-million dollar business." And it
Fantastic.
was like I had no idea if this was going to happen or not, but it was just like having those conversations, even just in a mirror, does something to
Yeah.
your unconscious mind,
Hmm.
right? That then builds in those beliefs of, when an opportunity comes, you go, well, yeah, of course I got this. Of course I can do this, because you've built that confidence, I guess, into yourself, and that belief of you can do it. And so, um,
Absolutely. And I know now there are gurus in our lives that are constant, and they all agree that it has so much to do with, your mindset and your thought
yeah,
pattern
truly.
and your subconscious. Some people equate that to your inner being, or, your connection to your source or to God, right? But the
Yeah.
idea that there's something, the connection piece is huge, that you don't feel alone, you don't feel that it's all you against the world, that you're connected to everybody
Right.
around you, as well as connected to, bigger things. So
Yeah.
I think that you kind of, like, I didn't know I knew that as a kid, but like I said, as I look back, I'm like, oh, that's totally how I lived.
Yeah.
Then I got to be an adult and had to get responsible and all that stuff. So
Right.
that's
So let's say then we continue throughout your journey, and so you're doing performing arts. When does the professor part of your life come into play? Because you did
well.
that for a decent amount.
Yeah, actually, I came back from California because I decided I liked the East Coast best.
Yeah.
And of course, now that I'm older, I would love to go back to the West.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so like I said, I met my husband, who's also a performer. And so we were doing, that kind of thing on the East Coast. But then we went ahead and had kids, which
Yeah.
wasn't quite in the plan, but, was the best thing that when it happened. So
Yeah.
once we shifted gears out of as much performing and being parents, and then we were more teachers, we started our own
Mm,
music school of private students,
really?
with him and I just doing piano and voice students. And then I also started to teach as an adjunct at the university. So I was teaching like music, all different kinds of music classes there, actually.
Hmm.
And but it was part time. Also, I would leave there and be able to go back, kind of back and forth. But and it was at my alma mater, because I had
Yeah.
graduated from William Patterson, so I knew a lot of the people, and it was just a beautiful community. And it's kind of one of those little gems, because it's real close to New York City, so you're getting all these wonderful New York City performers and level, professors
Right.
teaching at this school, and it's a state school, so it's inexpensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I stuck with that because I really believed in that. But then the time came when, yeah, it didn't work out for my husband and and it was fine. We both knew we're performers still, and we each had
Yeah.
kind of different goals, and we always stayed friends. And the kids had both of us pretty much all the time.
Love that.
But yeah, I really, really was positive that way. But then I did branch into my own business with a business partner who was a former student, because I felt that just singing wasn't enough for all these kids anymore. And so we wanted to make kind of a place for kids to go. And
Yeah.
we created Gateway to the Arts, which is acting, singing, dancing.
Yeah.
Among, of course, now it's like kids will come there and hang out for like 5 hours if they have 2 hours of class, because it's just a
Right.
big family and a big
That's
place for
awesome.
them to be safe. So yeah, so
Yeah.
that started 15 years ago, actually. And we started with my 40 voice students, private students,
Huh.
and we've grown to like, over 300 families now.
That is so amazing.
So it was
So,
really cool.
yeah, and I'm sure still continues to be beautiful just as you guide people, kind of like we were talking about before we hopped on, like in everything you're doing there, you're having so many of these conversations with people of, what's that next step in my life? What am I,
Yeah.
and so I would love to hear from you. Obviously you're around people that are in this phase every single day of their life, right? Of,
Right.
what am I going to do with my life? I got this degree. I'm not sure what I should do next. I'm curious, like, is there a piece of guiding advice that you always kind of go back to anytime a conversation like that comes up? You go, okay, well, I got to at least make sure I mention this or that.
Yes, I think that one of the most helpful tools that I used with each student, like I said, no matter if they're younger, because they want to go to private high schools, or if they want to get out of high school, go into college, or out of college into career, is just take a little time and think about a day in your life. What would the best day of your life look like? What is something you want to do when you wake up in the morning? What would excite you? When you have to go to work, or even if it's not work, what is something you really want to do or really want to see? Because inevitably, as a teenager, students have to not only consider what their dreams are, but what their parents want for them, because
Very
they
true.
have to pay for college, if
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. So we and what comes out of that is a lot of time talking to them. Being that I taught private voice, I'd get a lot of one-on-one time. So just talking
Yeah.
to them about discovery, like teaching them how to discover what feels good and what is something that they could see themselves doing. And then we would backtrack and find, all right, here's the steps of what it would take to do that. And
Yeah.
oftentimes kids, I being in the performing arts field, they wanted to be in the arts, they wanted to perform.
Totally.
And what I could tell all of them, and I think this goes for many different, types of career choices, is that there's not just one thing to do in that, field. As a
Right.
musician, there's a million different things you could choose to do, and so many ways to keep it in your life, which I myself did, just was performing on the side, as well as teaching, as well as creating and directing shows, and, doing
Right.
all the creative side of things. So that was what was fun, is I at least could say to them, hey, if I could do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
You just have to think about it.
I love
And
so let's say then, let's say I was one of your students and I came to you and I said, I'm, trying to figure this out. Could you walk me through, like, what's this discovery process if you were helping me figure that out, and kind of how do we do that? I would be curious to
well,
just
when we
kind of role play it.
start, yeah, it's a matter of first seeing what you want to do. So let's say that somebody says they want to be a star on Broadway, okay, or they
Yeah.
want to be a performer. And so the first thing we would do is, all right, well, how much do you love preparing and practicing and doing your craft every single day? And what kind of motivation do you have to do that? Like,
Yeah.
are you really happy? Because then we break down what is the actual job of being a performer. Is really, the job entails auditioning more than it is performing for a long time. So
Hmm.
you look at the realistic daily chores of what it will take. And then there's the fact of, well, I
I
have to
love that.
support myself.
Yeah.
So you look at the practicality, and the practicality is, can I support myself while doing what kind of job? And then we go through a list of all the different possible things that they might be interested in, that they could support themselves doing
Hmm.
while working on their craft and jumping into the audition
Right.
process. So,
Yeah.
so it's tools.
Yeah. I love one thing you said there too, is it's like, it's, do you really love the auditioning? Do you really love, like, the quote unquote work aspect of it that we could say? Because, it's like sometimes we could do, well, what do I want to do with my life? Well, I want to do this thing because if I could say I did this, man, my life would be amazing. And it's
Right.
like, well, maybe you want the title or the way that it would look, but at
Hmm.
the end of the day, do you actually enjoy doing what you would be doing in that, or to sustain that? Um, and
Correct.
I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, because it's such a, it's like you hear about the cliche of someone being like, I want to be a doctor, and they
Yeah.
go to medical school and they do their residency and they put in 10 years of going to school, and all of a sudden they
Yeah.
get into the doctor's office and they're like, wait, this is what I'm doing? Like, I don't want to do this. And it's like, you
Right.
just spent 10 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars figuring this
Yep.
out. Um, so I think that's just a really beautiful way to look at it. It's like, are you going to love the work that you
What
do,
you're
the
doing.
processes, what you're actually doing, not just the title, or yeah, that's just a
Absolutely.
beautiful way to look at it. I love that.
Yeah, because the funny part, like if you're in a Broadway show, you're doing the same thing 8 shows a week.
Yeah. Yeah, for
I
yeah.
mean, you get to sign autographs at the end and you love the music, but after a while it drives them all a little crazy, and that's why people can move around. But yeah, exactly that. What is your daily life look like? It always really comes back to that. So that's when I learned to start them there. And they don't always
Right.
know, it's like you can't
Totally.
always tell. And some people I was one of them. I performed all the time. I was like, I am never going to teach. Oh my gosh, my entire life is involved with the teaching, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Like I would have never imagined how wonderful and rewarding it was, or is, I should say.
Yeah.
And the same with my students that if they want to go into education, they're like, yeah, but if once I get into education I won't ever stop. I'm like, no, you will, but you'll see how happy you are,
Yeah.
you'll follow your direction, and just keep open-minded, like try the
Yeah.
different experiences, and that helps them a
Yeah.
lot, I think.
I love it. So, okay, so we're continuing through your life. You're teaching, you're,
Yep.
guiding people through their life and doing just a lot of honestly really beautiful work. And it sounds like loving life, doing a lot of,
Loving it.
just yeah, and really enjoyable things. And then I'm curious, at what point does I guess the cancer come into your life? And because that's obviously been a big part recently.
Exactly. Well, I would say that as I was living that life, like I was so happy every day because just I'm interacting
Beautiful.
with students and with people, and I love that part of it. But then I would get to my by myself driving in the car or at home, and I would realize how exhausted I was. I didn't ever go on vacation. I really didn't do much for myself. And what I've learned since then was that I wasn't listening to myself or to my body.
Hmm.
And as I started to be more fatigued and I started to, I then was like, all right, I need to take care of myself. So then you start slightly changing the diet, adding yoga, adding meditation, things
Yeah.
like that. And then realizing, okay, I really need something bigger, which is what I thought. I don't know that everybody realizes that, but what then happened is I started to experience pains in my abdomen, and enough that
Mm.
I finally went into the doctor's office, and they sent
Right.
me to the ER for a scan. And that was March 15th of 2019. So almost 2 years. That's when I found out I had an ovarian cancer tumor.
Wow.
So what was so fascinating about that moment, I
Yeah,
have a
please.
very good friend that we were talking about life all the time. And she had kind of talked me into the point where I maybe wanted to, quit doing the college work and just focus on the art performing arts school, because I was
Right.
just spread too thin. I was just
Yeah.
always working.
Yeah.
And, so we had actually talked about some of those things, and that how I finally was like, I really need a change. I really need my life to change. So the minute I got diagnosed, a little pre-story to that also was
Please. Yeah.
cancer's not in my family or anything. So I never really thought I'd have that experience. But I had a very good friend in high school who, when she was 25, was diagnosed with
Hmm.
Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she took a different route to fix it. She went to a institute, Hippocrates Institute in Florida, and just changed her entire lifestyle. And I had thought about that. We had been talking about that for probably almost 20 years prior to my diagnosis. But I
Right.
did finally say to myself, boy, if I ever did get cancer,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go there. I'm going to treat this as naturally as I can. So I kind of did have a plan. And as a result of that, which like I said, I never would have, why would I have a plan for that? I
Right.
had plans for heart attacks and things. That's my family tree.
Yeah.
But as a result, when I got that diagnosis, when they came in and told me that's what they found, I was like, okay, what's the next steps? Which of course was surgery to remove all the tumor.
Right.
And I did get a chemo wash to try to kill any of the extra. But the next plan for me was, as soon as I was cleared from surgery, I was going to fly to Florida and go through this 21-day
Right.
program and transform. And then what I was started to say about my friend and I having those conversations is that when she came into the hospital, we had a moment of almost like, oh my God, this is the life change you were putting out there that you
Yeah.
needed. So a little piece of me was like, wow, I kind of created this,
Yeah.
because it's okay to say that on one level, but then again, on a healing level, you're not taking on that I'm creating cancer in my body.
Right. Right.
That's a fine line
Yeah. So
between
what would you say is one of the biggest shifts you've made, right? Because you were in that space of I need something to change
Yeah.
life answers.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
what are some of the changes?
Okay, so the first thing I learned was again how my thoughts were working, which I wasn't paying attention to.
Hmm.
I probably felt a lot of things like, wow, I'm a single mom, so to speak. My kids are grown. I'm really on my own. I have great friends, but I kind
Yeah.
of was thinking if, even a little prior to this, if anything happened to me, who would actually help to take care of me? Who could I rely on? That sort
Yeah.
of thing. My inner dialogue was much more negative than you'd ever guess. The few people I've talked to about that who knew me
Right.
were shocked,
Yeah. That
because
it wasn't your natural
not me.
tendency.
Right. And I felt positive about so many things, but it's just I had a kind of a negative thing going on inside that I got in touch with. And then I started to watch how things changed in my life by just changing those thoughts
Hmm.
and the quieting down. So then all the tools of the taking time in your day for breath,
Yeah.
taking time in your day to get in tune with your thoughts and how does your body feel? Am I hungry? Am I tired? What do I need?
Yeah.
And it's just like learning how to check in with that. And then going into, I started to pick up meditation, of course. I had always meditated to some extent, but nothing as well done as I do
Right.
now.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I just didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But now between that, understanding that within my body, there are beliefs. And these beliefs can be on a subconscious level. They can be in your soul. They can be just in your
Yeah.
cells. You might not be aware of them at all. And I found a method of healing called Theta Healing, which is about meditating in theta brain waves. That I work with a practitioner, and it's amazing how your intuitiveness is so strong in telling you, just by what you're saying. Like if
Yeah.
I listen, she listens to what I say and says, "Is this what's happening right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's exactly what's happening." And so we can pull some of those old beliefs by getting in touch with them and releasing them. So this all has impact on your cells and the kind of message your cells receive, and then therefore your health. So that inner negative dialogue I had going on was feeding my cells very negative
Yeah.
things. And that is the biggest change I've made, is not letting myself think that. One tool I got to share with my students is I've learned, let's say in a moment you're having a very negative feeling, or you're very,
Right.
just down. And you think about, what is it that I'm thinking about that's making me feel this way? Or what's the thing around me? Go for something in your present place, wherever you are, or in your mind, and find a thought that feels better. So even if it's like I said, for me, I love a good cup of coffee. And that, of course, is
Yeah.
something I can't have that often. So either that, or for the kids, I say, what about ice cream? How does ice cream make you feel? And if it's not a food, what about a song?
Yeah.
What about a poem? What about just pulling out a piece of paper and writing down whatever is making you angry at the moment? But different tools like that to understand what your thought is and pick a better thought.
Yeah.
And then another tool we use is we pick an object. So it could be your toothbrush. And your toothbrush reminds you of, oh, I'm cleaning out all the bad stuff, or whatever happy thought you want
Yeah.
to attach to it. So in the beginning
I
of the
love
day and the
that.
end of the day, yeah, you're, when oh yeah, every time I look at my toothbrush, I'm going to remember this positive thought,
Right.
so there's a lineup of things like that,
I
that,
love that. I'm gonna do the toothbrush one. That's
yeah,
cool. You just every day and every night, you're like,
yep,
I'm amazing. Brushing your teeth, I'm amazing. I'm amazing. Or
that's
like
it.
whatever. But
Look at me
um,
shine. Yeah.
right. And just attaching a meaning to that activity that you do every day, and then it's gonna reinforce those positive things. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, can you explain a little bit more? So you said it's called theta meditation, theta wave
It's
meditation?
Theta Healing is an actual trademarked like therapy.
Okay.
And you can find it online. There's a website called thetagrace.com that the woman that I work with is there. And it's basically it's a meditation. Also, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza. He
Yeah,
is very
for
much
sure.
total mind body.
Oh.
That's been
He's
my,
similar to the theta, that similar practices.
it's that, yeah, it's the brain waves you get into when you're in your theta brainwave meditation, or if you get
Huh.
yourself to, and that's the place you go right before you fall asleep, or when you're just waking up
Right.
in the morning, your brain waves are in that space. And that is the space where you are most close in touch with your subconscious, or where you can be the
Hmm.
most impressionable upon your subconscious
Yeah.
to give it messages in terms of healing your body, or in terms of strengthening your immune system, especially now with COVID, or in terms of
Right.
feeling good about yourself and giving yourself, courage to do things, or whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
looking for.
And so
It
is it like a meditation where you would like, let's say, put headphones on and you close your eyes and you're guided through something, or is it
There is that.
pretty
There's
different?
that kind of meditations, but then the theta healing is working with a practitioner, and that's where they will go into a meditation with you, and
Huh.
and they're basically reading your energy. Okay,
Oh my
so
goodness.
it's pretty crazy. I mean, and
Yeah.
I thought too, okay, well, I'm certainly open to trying it. Well, and for me, it was the way
Totally.
it came about. It's like
Right.
it was suggested to me from my ex-husband's old friend from elementary school's
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
So, and then when I looked it up, I've recently moved to Maryland, and I've spent the last, 35 years in New Jersey. There wasn't one in my area in New Jersey, but there's one 20 minutes from me here in Maryland.
Huh.
So it just seemed like the next logical step.
Right.
And so what we will do in the session is, yeah, she will ask me about how I am, what are my concerns, what am I feeling. She will kind of intuitively tap into that. She'll go into this meditation, and things will come to her and she'll ask you about beliefs. Like, do
Yeah.
you believe that? And then you do this thing called muscle testing, which I know a lot of different therapies use. Again, that's your subconscious mind giving you the answers as to whether you believe something or not. And she
Dang.
guides you through all of that. And it cleanses you from, things I didn't know I believed. And it could be a
Right.
belief. So I was, go back to the mayor's daughter, do everything right always, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I worked so hard my whole life to always make sure everybody was happy. I pleased everybody. Everything was done, as well as I could. And if
Right.
I didn't please someone, I would take it personally.
Yeah.
Those are the negative things, that you store. But
Yeah.
the idea that I had that thing from my ancestors of, this is how you have to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I took that pressure off myself, and she pointed that out, and it was a belief, it was
Yeah.
strong. As soon as I took that pressure off myself, there was an amazing change in how much more open and light I felt
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
everything looked. It just, and we do put so much stress and pressure on ourselves these days
Yeah.
to, as that typical work yourself to pieces kind of.
Right. Well, I love that, and that is such a cool. I'm gonna have to look into that a bit more, see if there's someone around me
Sure.
that does it, because it just sounds like it would be a cool experience to do, and a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
worth
beautiful things
trying.
from it too.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Karen, I'm curious if people want to get more information on everything you're up to, and I know obviously you got some stuff you're doing on the East Coast and some other things, and if people just
Right.
want to get more info and see what's going on with Karen Bourne, where can they find you?
Well, I would say that, I mean, I haven't, I'm in the plans of making a place for that, but right now would
Yeah,
just be my Facebook would probably be the best way to
perfect.
get through that. But there we have to add my married name, which is Cafaro. So it's Karen Bourne Cafaro. And
Okay.
that's
Can you
on.
spell Cafaro? Because that sounds
Sure.
like a tricky one.
Right? Doesn't it? And if
Yeah.
you're Italian, more Italian, it makes more sense. But it's Cafaro, Cafaro.
I love. Okay,
So that
cool.
helps.
And so one last question I have for you, Karen, and this is something we ask all of our guests, is
Yeah.
we're all about helping people find direction, but we want to do it through execution, through like acting, right? That's how we
Yes.
ultimately are going to get clarity. And
Right.
so I would be curious, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
I think that about what I was talking about, where you just take the time out, little breath, and start listening to what are your thoughts, especially what are you thinking when you put your head on the pillow,
Mm,
and what are the thoughts right before you go to sleep.
yeah.
And then know that you are in full control of your thoughts. Think
Yeah.
something positive. say something positive, even if you need to write down something positive and read it to yourself before you go to sleep, because you're there kind of programming your subconscious. And
Right.
that's the message, because it goes unemotionally to the body. The body doesn't care how you feel about whatever it is that you're saying. If it's like, oh, I'm really, I'm so something negative, your body doesn't know it's negative. It's like, okay, that's what I am. And
Yeah.
it just kind of executes that. So getting in touch with your thoughts, changing your thoughts, something positive before you go to sleep. And just like you said, pick an object, your
Yeah.
toothbrush, put Post-its on your mirror, but pick an object that reminds you, maybe it's your keys or your
Yeah.
wallet
Yeah.
or something your phone, something you always go to, and uh, attach something positive to that.
Right. I
So
love
that's
it. I
a
love it. I
start.
love it. Awesome. Well, Karen, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you on the
My
podcast.
pleasure.
You are just a wealth of wisdom and beautiful knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.